So what happens when you have a movie that's so good that the Academy Awards basically does everything in its power and does whatever it takes so it will not have to even think about giving it an Academy Award come Oscar night? Well, number 16 on my list of my top 30 favorite movies may be one of the more notorious films that had that happen to it. When basically it wasn't the Academy Awards, it was basically the documentary division. But we'll get to that as we move along here. But number 16 of my top 30 favorite movies of all time is the 1994 documentary film Hoop Dreams. 1994 was such a strong year for movies. You had great movies like The Lion King, Forrest Gump, The Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction, Quiz Show, Speed, just to name a few. But out of all those big movies, only one movie was seen on more than a number of different top 10 lists than any other film. And it wasn't Forrest Gump, it wasn't Pulp Fiction, it was Hoop Dreams. If you've never heard of this movie, you really need to see it, man. But the movie basically follows two African-American teenagers, William Gates and Arthur Agee, who are recruited by a scout from St. Joseph High School in Westchester, Illinois, a predominantly white high school with an outstanding basketball program, whose alumni include NBA great Isaiah Thomas. Agee and Gates are both from poor African-American neighborhoods in Chicago, Illinois. Gates lived in Cabrini Green, while Agee and his family live in West Garfield Park. Taking 90-minute commutes to school, enduring long and difficult workouts and practices, and having to assimilate to a foreign social environment, Gates and Agee struggle to improve their athletic skills in a job market with heavy competition. Along the way, their families celebrate their successes and support each other during times of economic hardship caused by the school changes. The film raises a number of issues concerning race, class, economic division, education, and values in contemporary America. A lot of these issues obviously can easily be related to what's going on in our world today, but what's beautiful about this movie is how the movie plays it out, like how the story is played out over the course of this film. It plays it very realistically. It doesn't force over the harsher aspects of life. It plays it all out in the way that regular people would act in a situation like this. You really do become invested in these two kids, and you do want them to succeed because of how they've lived. And you don't see somebody just faking the sympathy for the sake of the documentary. It's all real, and it's rewarding to see two real-life families acting like normal people. And what's also shockingly good about this movie is the fact that this movie is nearly 3 hours long. And yet you never get bored because you're just so invested in what's going on with the characters that you lose track of the time. It's like watching an Avengers movie, or The Dark Knight, or more recently, Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon. If you have a good enough story and characters that you really want to get behind and figure out what's going to happen to them, you need to have the right way of working it out. Like this is one of those movies that, yeah, it's over 2.5 hours long, but you're so invested in what's going on that you forget about the runtime altogether. And that's how you feel when you see this film. And the man to thank for that is this director, Steve James, who uses his cinema verite style to give the documentary its own unique styles to it. Steve James is also the guy that made the documentary about Roger Ebert that came out a few years ago, Life Itself, which is another fantastic documentary. If you haven't seen that one, I highly recommend checking that one out. He's also done stuff like Prefontaine. We talked about that on Time About the Movies. Joe and Max, Passing Glory. But Life Itself and this movie are his two best films by a large margin. I mean, he is a guy that he took a lot of influence from Robert Altman, specifically the movie Nashville, and you can definitely tell when he makes his movies. I mean, he has a very unique edge to him that makes him different compared to most documentary filmmakers in general. And which may have been kind of a little bit of the downside of what happened to the film in terms of its award success. With a movie like this that does everything right and scores unexpected box office success and huge critical acclaim and appearing on as many top 10 lists as you can expect, you would think this would be a surefire bet for the Oscars' top prizes, right? Yeah, not exactly. Not only did this film not get a Best Picture nomination, which would have been hard to do anyway, but it didn't even get a Best Documentary nomination. It didn't get a Best Editing nomination. And that decision basically infuriated many people, critics and audiences. Even the year's Oscar host that year, David Letterman, made some jabs about it in his opening monologue. And when Hoop Dreams didn't get nominated, Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert basically had the brave balls to go on national television and go on about how the Documentary Guild of the Oscar continued their controversial streak of picking unpopular documentaries over the more successful ones. And As we basically found out later on in the summer, it was basically revealed that the Documentary Guild basically did that purposely, giving Hoop Dreams their lowest ratings possible so it wouldn't even have a chance to get the nominations, and that other lesser films would get a nomination. And let's just go back and take a look at what movies were nominated for the Oscars for Best Documentary that year. So you had Maya Lin, A Strong Clear Vision, Complaints of a Dutiful Daughter, D-Day Remembered, Freedom on My Mind, and A Great Day in Harlem. Of all the ones I talked about here, the only one that I know of, because I talked about it on Time About the Movies, was A Great Day in Harlem. It was a movie I'd never seen before, but did any of those movies really stand out compared to Hoop Dreams? Yeah, I don't think so. And it's not surprising that Hoop Dreams... let's delve in more into a little bit of the controversy here, because I have the thing here on Wikipedia here. I'll basically kind of run it down for you real quick here, just to give you an idea of what basically happened. So it says here, the controversy over Hoop Dreams' exclusion was enough to have the Academy Awards begin the process to change its documentary voting style. Roger Ebert looked into its failure to receive a nomination, and he said, "We learned through very reliable sources that members of the committee have a system. They carried little flashlights. When one gave up on a film, he waved a light on the screen. When the majority of flashlights had voted, the film was switched off. Hoop Dreams was stopped after 15 minutes. So... yeah, they basically said that this was... they basically didn't even give the movie a chance. Like, they did... it's like... it just didn't make any sense whatsoever. And basically what happened was that the Academy's executive director took the unprecedented step of asking accounting firm Price Waterhouse, which basically runs the voting... is the protector of the awards, the Oscar envelopes. They hold on to it until the night of the show. And basically, they were asked to turn over the complete results of that year's voting, which members of the committee had rated each of the 63 eligible documentaries on a scale of 6 to 10. What he said was, "What I found is that a small group of members gave zeros to every single film except the 5 they wanted to see nominated, and then they gave 10s to those 5, which completely skewed the voting. There was one film that received more scores of 10 than any other, but it wasn't nominated. It also got zeros from those few votes, and that was enough to push it into 6th place." And Steve James has basically said that with so few people looking at any given film, it only takes one to dislike a film, and its chances of making the shortlist are diminished greatly. So they've got to do something about that, I think, to make the process more sane for deciding the shortlist. Among other rule changes taking effect in 2013, the Academy began requiring a documentary to have been either reviewed by the New York Times or the Los Angeles Times and be commercially released at least 1 week in both of those cities. Advocating the rule change, Michael Moore, which I don't think I need to say who Michael Moore is, said that when people gave the award for Best Documentary and they go on stage and thank the Academy, it's not really the Academy, is it? It's 5% of the Academy. So Hoop Dreams was one of those movies that basically was seen as one of many different movies that was basically affected by the Academy, by the documentary division. This isn't even the first time that they did this. Stuff like Crumb was not nominated. Neither was Roger and Me, which was Michael Moore's early film. The Thin Blue Line, Shoah, Gates of Heaven, Gimme Shelter. And it's continued on after this. I mean, The Cellular Closet was another one. American Movie, Fahrenheit 9/11, Grizzly Man, King of Kong, the aforementioned Life Itself, Won't You Be My Neighbor. Like, really good documentaries that the Academy Awards just didn't nominate because they probably did the same thing they did with Hoop Dreams. They just basically gave it the lowest rating they could and just wanted to nominate the movies that they wanted to nominate, which I think is really, really unfortunate that this happened. And yeah, like I said, I'm sorry. This is unfair on so many levels. Who cares if the movie was a bigger success than lesser-known documentaries? People loved it. Critics loved it. The country loved it. And what did you do? Deny a nomination because it's a popular film. And of course, that led to, like I said, led to a major outcry about changes in the nomination process. And by the next year, the rules had changed dramatically. But even still, after all the controversies with Hoop Dreams and the Oscars, this film has really stood the test of time after 30 years. It's become one of the most influential movies of all time, pretty much. It proves that you don't need an abundance of talking heads to make a good documentary. And Hoop Dreams is one of those first documentaries to create something new and entirely different, and it becomes great in the process. I mean, the Don Hahn movies, Waking Sleeping Beauty and Howard, also kind of did something unique that was very different compared to documentaries as a whole, and I think that definitely deserves a lot more attention as well. But I mean, Hoop Dreams is one of those movies because it works because you're so invested in the main characters. You see families acting like real families. You don't see obnoxiousness being rewarded for the sake of being obnoxious. You see anger when it needs to be there. You see joy when it needs to be there. You don't care that it's 3 hours long because you're enjoying what's going on here. And that's what makes this movie so great. It's one of those movies that it takes chances. It, at the same time, it doesn't lose sight of the meaning of what it's trying to bring out. It's a classic movie that keeps you invested all the way through. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I love this movie. It's definitely something that needs to be seen. If you have not seen Hoop Dreams, I highly recommend checking it out. It's my 16th favorite film of all time. And with that said, we've reached the halfway point. Next week, we head into number 15. And we'll tackle that on next week's episode. But if you want to see what I said about Batman Mask of the Phantasm, my 17th favorite film, check it out on the link below. Check out the other episodes we've done. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. So until then, I'll see you next time. Take care.